You are listening to KGVM Bozeman.
Hello, Bozeman. We are the Vegans of Bozeman. We're a community group committed to environmentalism, human health, and animal health as well. And we're hoping that through this podcast, we can inspire some of you to also become vegan for those same reasons.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Sarah with Vegans of Bozeman, and a little bit about me. I was born in Missoula, Montana, born and raised. Left for college in Chicago, where I met my husband. We had our children, and we spent some years in New Hampshire as well as a couple years in Texas. But always wanted to get back to Montana, and so we've been living here. Our family's all here now for the past about 10 years. And I'm in my late 40s, and I am also a preschool teacher here in Bozeman. And I also help take care of my mom.
All right. My name is Kevin, from the East Coast, and grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and went to the military, went to college, met my wife, Sarah, and right now I work for a delivery company in town, driving around in brown trucks, and kind of in the midlife range, right? And been a vegan for about 7 years.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm originally from France. I moved to Bozeman to be with my now husband. I don't work. I'm waiting for my green card, so I do animal rights advocacy. And I'm 25.
I'm Lenny. I grew up in Helena, and right now I'm a college student in my 20s here in Bozeman. And I work at the university a little bit too.
Nice.
Yeah, and Lenny and Lucy braved the elements to get over here today. So
Yeah, we were like over 2 feet of snow out there today.
Lenny was a true native Montanan. He was like, "Oh, it's fine. We'll be there in a couple hours."
We'll be there on time. Yeah.
We
Awesome.
weren't there on time, but we were there.
Oh, hey, close enough.
We were going to start today's program with a little quiz. It's just a 2-question quiz to get all of us thinking. So the first question is a true-false question. This times like this, I kind of wish we had a call-in show so we could get immediate feedback from you listeners. But for now, we'll just have to settle with wondering what your answers would be. But for the first question, true or false? Female cows of a certain age automatically produce milk. Again, that's true or false. Female cows of a certain age automatically produce milk. Okay, second question. This one is, which animal would you say has the better life? A cow raised to produce dairy or a cow raised to produce beef? So again, which animal would you assume has the better quality of life? A cow raised to produce dairy or a cow raised to produce beef? So if someone would have asked you that question, I don't know, when you were, let's just say 10 years old, what would you say at that time to those questions?
When I was 10 years old, I'm sure that I would imagine that a dairy cow, for the second question, a dairy cow would have a better life than a cow raised to produce beef. Now I think I know better, but we'll get into that. And I think that for people who are raised to understand, raised to understand that they think milk is produced for human consumption, it is a product before it is a biological function, might make sense that female cows automatically produce milk, but I also know today that that is not true.
Mm.
Yeah, myself, same thing. I think as children we're enculturated, I think that might be a good word, or educated, or whatever those words might be, to think that life on the farm is very happy and that cows give milk and the farmer's happy and everyone's happy. And yeah, how bad could it be to be a cow? You live out in the pasture, you get to go hang out in the pasture and eat grass all day and just roam around and produce milk for the farmer and his family and his neighbors and his community, and be a pretty good life.
I would definitely. I like that you said enculturation, because, you know, I remember when my children were small, how much of, you know, early childhood books, you know, the little cardboard books that they get first, or the fabric books that they get first, are about, you know, the farm animals, the happy farm animals, and what they do for us, or like the decor, the decorations in a baby's nursery. Sometimes they're happy farm animals, and you know, even in my classroom, there's always a bunch of farm puzzles. You know, so yeah, we're definitely given an idea very early on that animals on the farm are very happy, that it's a happy place for them to be, and I would say that I think there is implicit and explicit enculturation going on with kids from a very young age about this, because I work with 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and by the time they're 4 years old or 5 years old, they already definitely have the belief that cows give us milk, that cows' job is to make milk for us. In fact, at the school where I teach, one day I walked into the teacher photocopy room, and laying there on the counter, a teacher had left a coloring page for the first graders. And it was animals on the farm. Animals have jobs. And I remember there being like, you know, the chicken's job is to give us eggs. The sheep's job is to give us wool. You know, the cow's job is to give us milk. So, you know, that's pretty explicit, to be teaching kids that the whole purpose, the whole reason for existence for animals is for what they can give us. You know.
Also, it makes me think about something interesting. Often in conversations, people say, "Well, it's their job because they get like shelter and food and they're taken care of, right?" And so it's also this idea of like they're willing participants in this job and they benefit equally to this implicit agreement. It's seen that way, and that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, almost like it's like a partnership. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll give you food and water and shelter, and you give us, you know, your products, your secretions, whatever it might be. So, yeah, it's a very anthropocentric view. It's very much like this kind. It comes from, I think, this idea, which I know has been around for centuries, probably since humans came on the planet, that we kind of have taken on this attitude that everything in existence is here for us to do with whatever we want to do with impunity. Like, there's no necessarily like considering, well, how does this affect the planet, or how does this affect the soil, or how does this affect you know, the water or the air or the animals or whatever it may be. It's just it's like humans have looked around and just thought, well, how can that profit me? How can that benefit me? And that's like the only point of consideration when making decisions.
And it's interesting that we really see this, for example, dairy to us, especially in Western cultures, I guess. We see that as an integral part of human life, that you eat dairy. Like it's part of it, like it's eternal in a way. And that makes it very difficult for us to question if actually it is that way, because it's like a non-question. It's just, this is the way it's been eternally, and it's the way it should be, therefore, kind of thing, you know?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that right there is the power of culture. It's so normalized that no one even questions it. And when someone comes along and does question it, they think you're maybe crazy or, you know, you're a troublemaker, those kinds of things. Yet these same people believe in freedom and peace and nonviolence.
We do hold those values. And so I think that being open to questioning our culture is something that, you know, it's a good value. It's a good practice. It's a good habit to have, to actually.
It's necessary for this, actually. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think brings us to the next point, which is, you know, inevitably in my preschool classroom, around the snack table or around the lunch table, a child will say at some point, oh yeah, cows make milk for us. And, you know, much to the chagrin of the children's parents or my school's administration even, you know, I feel like just as an educator, I can't just let that statement stand. And so, you know, we inevitably will have the conversation each school year of, you know, I'll stop them and I'll say, children, you know, why does any mammal produce milk? You know, and it'll take them a while of discussing back and forth. But I'll say to them, you know, we just learned about bats, you know, or we just read about giraffes or whatever. Why does any mammal, from mice to whales to, you know, bobcats to humans, why does any mammal produce milk? And so eventually I'll have a student speak up and say, oh, I know why, you know, because it's to feed their babies. So, you know, that's not really a debatable, you know, now we're kind of getting out of what we've been taught by our culture, and we're getting just into kind of a non-debatable scientific fact that mammals only ever produce milk because they just recently delivered a baby, and their bodies are ready to sustain that baby and give that baby everything that baby needs to grow up. So cows are exactly the same. The only reason why a cow would ever produce milk is because she just recently delivered a calf. So given that fact, when we kind of take that fact and then we kind of superimpose it onto the dairy farm, and this is whether it be a local dairy farm here in the valley or, you know, one of the bigger factory farms around the country or the world. If you think about that, every dairy cow that the farmer is selling their milk, it means that dairy cow had to become pregnant, had to deliver a baby to start producing that milk. So when that baby is born, of course, the farmer is trying to sustain his livelihood. He's trying to provide for himself and his family. So he can't allow the milk to be drank by the baby calf. That's his money. That's the farmer's money. So basically, and this is true on any local family farm all the way up to the biggest farms, the calves are taken from their mothers almost always within the first 24 hours of life. They want to do it as soon as possible because they don't want the mother cow and the baby to bond. You know, lots of times there's plenty of footage that you can see on YouTube or other places of farmers taking the calves away, and lots of times, the cow will put her body between her baby and the farmer. She'll be trying to stop, and she'll be crying or mooing or whatever you want to call it, and as the farmer's taking the calf away, the calf is crying for his mother. Or I think there's one documentary where we watched and the farmers knew they were being documented, so they actually took the mother right after delivery and took her to the milking room and hooked her up and started milking her. And then while she was being milked, they took the baby away. And of course, as soon as they unhooked her, she ran back to her stall to get back to her baby. And of course, the baby was gone. And so she started looking everywhere for the baby.
And you'll hear these mother cows will then, what's the word, kind of like vocalize.
Yeah, clearly distressed.
Right. And we have some friends, right, who live by a farm over here, right here in the valley. And you can talk about that, but every time that season rolls around where these mother cows are having babies and they're removing the calves from them, there's just a whole chorus of these cows complaining or yearning for their children.
Yeah, all day, all night.
All day, all night. Yep. And our friends made the comment to us, "Oh, we know what." They're hearing these mother cows complaining all night, and they know what time of year it is. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, in fact, Gary Yourofsky has a very famous video on YouTube. I think whoever posted it on YouTube originally called it like the greatest speech you'll ever hear, or something along those lines. So
still there if you want to check it out.
Yeah, if you're curious at all about this, he talks about this in his video a little bit. And I just remember him saying, out of all the farms I've visited in my life, out of all the slaughterhouses I've spent time at, the most haunting, distressing cries he's heard from animals is when mothers are grieving the loss of their calves. Because, whether you want to just call it simple biological instinct or however you want to think about it, any mammal who delivers a baby has the instinct to care for and protect and take care of, nurture their young.
Especially they carry them for, is it 9 months as well?
Yeah.
Like it's really similar to a human pregnancy. So obviously you bond with that young while they're in the belly as well, right? I mean,
right.
In some ways,
it's
similar. Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Well, it's also interesting to me when you see the footage of the mother cows, like you said, grieving for their babies when their babies have been separated from them. And same for sheep. I mean, we saw last week, the vegans of 2 weeks ago, Vegans of Bozeman watched a documentary called Peaceable Kingdom, and we'll talk about that a little more later. But there were a lot of goats. Yeah, there were a lot of animals that were moved from one farm to another to an animal sanctuary. And there was all this, and a lot of the people who were moving these animals didn't know who the mothers and the babies were, and so you would see these animals reuniting at the farm sanctuary, and you saw some mothers who were still waiting for their children, like they knew who their children were, and that's crazy if you think about that right there, how intelligent these animals are, and yet we're using them as a commodity, and in some ways it's sad. But I think the one thing I wanted to, the whole reason I spoke up here is that when you watch this footage of these animals, these cows, they're so docile. Like they don't really have a defense, right? I mean, I don't even know if they would bite a farmer. They just run up and they try to put their
gentle, yeah.
Yeah, they're extremely gentle. They just put their bodies. They vocalize. They don't really have any defenses. They're really reliant on humans and other people to help them, and it's just kind of sad to see it. It's very sad.
Which is probably why they ended up being so exploited.
Yeah.
I mean, these animals usually are the ones that are not going to fight back, right?
Right.
It's just easier for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said there, because I think you're absolutely right. It's no coincidence that we don't try to milk bobcats or grizzly bears or wolves, which are actually indigenous to this area, or maybe even bison. And it's not a coincidence that we don't try to harvest milk from the mammals that are actually, or deer or whatever.
Right.
I mean, yeah, these animals actually have been domesticated to be docile, to be peaceful. And if you think about it, all of the animals that are used in animal agriculture, whether it be pigs or chickens or sheep or cows, they are the most peaceful animals on the planet. You know, they can't fight back. They can't defend themselves. They can't resist whatever's happening to them. So,
and when they try, they learn very quickly. For example, not to do that. For example, like many of these cows, like they are, I mean, they show how upset they are in the first times that their cows are taken away from them. And then they learn that it's just not going to help, and they stop. Like, they still care, but it's like, it's trauma. They're not going to even try to run after the calf or anything because they know it's not going to do anything, so they just give up.
If this is interesting to you, the listener, there's a documentary on, I know it's available on Amazon Prime, and it's simply titled Cow. And what this filmmaker did without any monologue at all, she just followed this one specific dairy cow around for a few years with the farmer's permission. It was just a local.
What's her name? Lulu? Was that Lulu?
Luna.
Luna
is
Luna.
the cow's name, right? So the documentary is just called Cow, and I think it's an amazing job of just letting you see life through this cow's eyes, what she experiences, without any explanations of why it's happening or what exactly is going to happen next or anything. You just experience it, almost like how she might be experiencing it. And yeah, what you just said, Lucy, reminded me of that, because at one point when they took one of her calves away, and she cried and she looked everywhere she could. She was frantic, and but then at some point you just see her standing. They're supposed to be eating. All the other cows are standing there eating, and she's standing with the other cows, and she just puts her forehead up against the side of the cow that's next to her, and she just has this, like, she has no interest in, she just looks very despondent, basically. Like no interest in eating.
She's not eating, right?
Yeah.
It reminds me actually of Peaceable Kingdom. I mean, many.
Another documentary.
Yeah, the one we were talking about earlier. And these goats and sheep that were separated from their babies in the industry a couple of times, the sanctuary owners had to kind of train them back into carrying their young, because they had learned to detach themselves and not bond with them. And so after like a little while of like pushing the baby to the mother again and again, they were like, okay, so like the baby's staying with me, and they actually learned to care for their young again, because they could tell that it was safe to do so.
Right. I've also heard stories of when cows get onto a farm sanctuary, they'll go and they'll hide while they go into labor, and they'll deliver a baby, and they'll keep the baby hidden from the farmer, and the farmer will finally realize, oh, she delivered at some point, like, and they'll go looking for the baby, and because the mother cow is so worried that they're just going to take away her baby again.
Right.
So,
and I don't know if you're going to go back to the process of when you were describing what happens to cows and the babies are removed because a cow makes milk or right after they've given birth. And then the calf is separated from the cow, and then that cow is milked for us. But I wondered if you're going to get into how cows are continually impregnated.
Definitely, yeah. We could definitely get into discussing our second question: which animal has the better life, a cow raised for dairy or a cow raised for beef? But just to wrap up question one properly. Do female cows of a certain age automatically produce milk? Hopefully, we've convinced you that no, they do not automatically produce milk. They produce milk for their babies, just like any other mammal. So, second question. Yeah, I think if you would have asked me the question when I was a child or teenager, what would you rather be? A cow raised for beef or a cow raised for dairy? I would have been, well, that's easy. We all know at some point that beef cows are slaughtered and used for meat. But I think a lot of us, as young people especially, have the assumption that dairy cows live out a long, happy, peaceful life. But yeah, to answer the question more fully, I think it'd be good to just kind of go through the life cycle of a dairy cow. So when a calf is born on a dairy farm, definitely if this is a male calf that's been born, a male calf has absolutely no value to a dairy farmer. They are considered waste products. So male calves are usually killed within a few days of birth, unless the farmer has some kind of arrangement with a veal production farm. In fact, a lot of people say that the veal industry, the only reason the veal industry is still alive is because of the dairy industry. The dairy industry produces a surplus of calves. So unfortunately, even a lot of the female calves that are born have the same fate as the male calves. But the veal industry would not exist if it wasn't for the dairy industry. Which I remember when I found that out, that might have been one of the things that took me from being vegetarian to actually considering veganism. Because I was like, I'm not eating dead animals anymore, and I feel pretty good about that. But to find out that actually I'm supporting the veal industry by consuming dairy.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. A lot of people switch from vegetarian to vegan because of that.
Mm-hmm. And we know there is a veal farm just probably a couple miles from where we're sitting right now here in Bozeman. It has baby calves in little, they almost look like dog kennels out in the yard.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I remember the first time I delivered. I'm a delivery driver. I delivered out there, and it was nighttime. It was wintertime. And I stopped the truck. I was getting out to deliver a package, and I heard these noises, moos and things like that. I'm like, what's going on? And close to the side of the road were these veal, like these little, whatever we call them. They almost look like little dog kennels.
Yeah, I think they're called hutches.
Hutches, but they're really small.
Yeah.
You got this baby cow inside this, confined inside these hutches, which is probably the size of a large dog kennel, maybe a little bigger than that. So,
right. Which of course those calves are killed within a few months of birth. But the female calves that they do decide to keep on at the dairy operation are separated from their mothers, of course, and they're just fed a watered down milk replacer. And one of the many heartbreaking things about this is, like any mammal, these calves have such a strong sucking reflex, like any newborn, human or whatever, like they have this insatiable desire to find nourishment through sucking. And so you'll see these little calves like just looking for something to latch onto, and they'll be trying to suck on each other or the farmer's fingers or whatever. I think we did see a documentary where they were pouring the milk replacer into a trough, but then the calves actually had like these little rubber nipples that they could access the formula through. So, but yeah, these female calves are weaned off of the milk replacer at a few months old, and then before they even turn 1 year old, they start injecting these female calves with hormones, basically to force them to ovulate. Because again, they're trying to maximize production of milk. So as long as this calf is not ovulating and can't become pregnant and can't deliver a baby, they're never going to get any product or any money out of this calf. So before they're a year old, they will force them to ovulate. And as soon as they're ovulating, the calf will be inseminated, usually artificially, which, I don't think there's any argument that is not a pleasant process to go through. Even, standard practices would say that, they do it in a very humane way. But I mean, you can look at those videos put out by 4-H or lots of different farming educational type videos and watch it. I mean, I think we would all agree that does not look pleasant. That does not look like anything any of us would want to go through.
It's actually hard to watch.
Yes, yeah. As soon as they confirm that this calf has indeed conceived or is pregnant, of course, it's just a waiting game at that point to until she delivers. And again, she delivers the calf, she begins lactating, the calf is taken away almost immediately, and then the cow is milked. And, of course, there's nothing natural about the way that this happens. Through biological manipulation, the cow is caused to produce about 12 times more milk than they would produce for a calf. So they're milk machines, basically. They're milked hard, and they're milked several times a day. And because of this constant cycle of artificial insemination, pregnancy, delivery, lactating, being milked very aggressively, most of these dairy cows, honestly, they only live between 4 to 6 years. Yeah. Their bodies just give out. And like, speaking as a woman, but I'm sure even, men can imagine this on some level as well. Like, if your body is being used to this degree constantly, just cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle, it makes complete sense to me that your body would just start to give out.
Right. And that's the thing. They burn these cows out, right? And a cow left to like a natural life would live, 20, 30 years old?
Right.
And yet they're living like, I don't know what you said, 4 to 6, maybe 6, 7. Yeah. And then what happens to them?
Yeah. So then they're sold for cheap beef, basically.
Oh yeah. Did we forget to mention like the infections and the mastitis infection?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I think their bodies give out is because of the constant aggressive milking through these machines, they almost always develop an incredible case of mastitis, which, this happens to human women as well, where you start to have like a infection in the breast, which is very painful. And, of course, with humans, it's very easily treatable. I'm sure with cows, it'd be very easily treatable as well. But at some point, it all comes down to dollars and cents and what is profitable. And if you have a surplus of calves being born, why would you spend the time and money trying to give medical attention or medical care to a sick cow when you really don't have to? And so it's just easier. It's more economically efficient, to just send her to slaughter. And again, you can see innumerable videos of dairy cows who, with these enormous udders, who can barely walk. They're trying to send them to slaughter, and they can't even walk up the ramp to get into the truck to send them to slaughter.
Yeah.
And then, in fact, I read a study this week that said that, a large percentage, this study said that between 26 to 30% of dairy cows that are sent to slaughter are pregnant at the time that they're sent to slaughter. So yeah, all in all, the more you learn about the I don't know, the biological manipulation of these animals and just this aggressive schedule that they're on.
Well, and you said it nicely. You said that they're, inseminated, but they're forcefully inseminated over and over into these cycles. I mean, so they're burned out. I mean, if that would happen to any human,
even to, puppy mills, like rightfully so, like have kind of earned for themselves a really negative reputation. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who say you should adopt dogs. You should not shop for dogs because don't support these puppy mills where these breeding dogs are treated like machines, basically. Well, I would really hope if that describes our listener that they would also consider, not wanting to support dairy any longer because it's precisely the same experience that's done on a much larger scale.
Yeah, what's always funny to me too, I had this conversation with somebody, now there's a lot of plant-based milks on the market. But what's so interesting to me is even like you go get a gallon of milk or a half gallon or whatever. I mean, to me, I don't know if our tastes have changed, but even when you open a brand new thing of milk, it still smells like it's already gone bad to me. It already smells like it's souring when I just bought it, whenever that was, years ago. And I had the conversation with somebody this week and they said they agreed. They're like, yeah, it does smell sour. And you have to think about that. We don't have time to probably or know all the ins and outs from when the cow's milk to when it gets to market, but it's just interesting to me.
It's a very perishable product, which is just one more little reason to be like, is this really a necessary product for us to continue to support or subsidize?
Well, and that is a question. I know we've been talking about the animal welfare side of this argument, and there is a human cost as well to drinking dairy, and that might be a whole nother show, but I think it's worth mentioning, some of the things, to tease another show at some point. The majority of humans in the world are lactose intolerant. And it's interesting, when you're a newborn baby, your body creates this enzyme called lactase that allows you to process your mother's milk. But usually you lose that enzyme when you turn about 4 years old. And it's just interesting that we're continuing as humans. And by the way, humans are the only species that drinks another species' milk. No other species does that.
We call someone crazy if they would consider to drink another species' milk, like, for example, giraffes or elephants. Like, why would you even consider that? Well, it's a little arbitrary, isn't it? Well,
and the thing is, places in big cities where they have a lot of rats, I just don't understand why they're not milking rats for milk.
Huge loss.
But so many humans are lactose intolerant. And just a funny story, one of our family members decided he was going to go vegan for 30 days. So he did that. And when he went back after he developed lactose intolerance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's just funny to me. Like many Native Americans, many African Americans are very lactose intolerant.
Yeah, it's mostly just Western Europeans that have kind of developed.
Right, but even with them, if they stop drinking it, they start to develop a lactose intolerance. So it's the whole enzyme your body changes. But what's interesting, and this is something to get into at some point, that the U.S. government and government agencies are still promoting healthy dairy products, healthy in air quotes, to these communities, to African American communities, to Native American communities, and yet they are biologically incapable of processing this. So,
and then there's all the studies about how it actually is really bad for even people who can digest it.
Right.
So I think we'll need a show.
Yeah, absolutely, because the other thing is osteoporosis. Absolutely.
There's a lot more to say about dairy.
Yeah, a lot of even the health benefits that come from milk, a lot of that is because of how it's fortified, which obviously you don't have to consume a cow's milk to consume a fortified product.
Interesting. So it's not even naturally there.
And that's not all of it.
Right.
That's not the entire health thing.
Right.
That's a pretty big portion of it that is often left out of discussion.
That's a great point.
Totally. And I know, and I just want to say this too, even the concept of osteoporosis, the United States is one of the largest consumers of milk, and we also suffer from the highest rates of osteoporosis. And so you have to wonder, and some plant-based doctors are starting to argue that actually drinking cow's milk is one of the leading causes, what is one of the triggers, catalysts for osteoporosis. And it's interesting too, Dr. Milton Mills, an African-American doctor, plant-based, he made the point in a video. He was speaking to I think the USDA board, and he said something to the effect that African-American women are genetically protected from osteoporosis, but when they drink cow's milk, they kind of lose that ability, and yet the government is pushing cow's milk to them. So it's just an interesting thing.
And and just I mean, when you look at the ingredient list, it just reminds me of the soy milk conversation that people have, like being concerned about the hormones and estrogen in soy milk, right? And doctors, when you ask them these questions, like nutritionists, etc., like the thing is that the hormones you find in milk, the estrogen you find in milk, is actually the hormones that are much, much stronger than the.
Well, I think in general, though, I think it is true that cow's milk, the estrogen is an animal estrogen, whereas soy milk, it's a plant estrogen. It's called phytoestrogen. So
we'll
it's
have
just
to look into the studies.
We'll look into it. But I also find it fascinating that the whole point of cow's milk from a mother cow is to grow this 100-pound animal into, I don't know, 1,000-pound animal in a short period of time. So plant estrogen doesn't quite do that.
Yeah, and the vaccines that are given to cows, the medications, the hormones, etc., just to keep them alive and relatively healthy, right? It's also something to consider.
Absolutely.
So maybe just to wrap up our little quiz time and our quiz conversation, the second question, which animal has a better life, the dairy cow or the beef cow? I know Kevin was watching a YouTube video maybe yesterday about this, and I think was it Dairy is Scary?
Dairy is Scary.
It's a short little video on YouTube. So if you're interested, check that out. But I think she ended that video very, very well just by saying, well, yeah, we all know that beef cows are killed for beef, but a dairy cow is biologically exploited and emotionally abused, and just goes through these endless cycles of exploitation, and then she's killed for beef. So I hope that maybe we've at least caused you to begin to question the idea that dairy cows' lives are certainly not any better than the life of beef cows.
And also, you have any comments for us, you can send it to our email address at vegansofbozeman@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, I believe Facebook as well. Yep. And
YouTube. If you want to watch the replay, we'll be on YouTube.
Vegans
of Bozeman, yeah.
And you are listening to KGVM Bozeman. This is the Vegans of Bozeman radio show.
Yeah, we'd like to talk a little bit more about what Vegans of Bozeman does. If you want to check us out, you can especially check us out on Facebook. We have monthly potlucks. We have monthly documentary screenings, and we'll talk about these more in other shows.
All free to the public.
Absolutely.
Yep. All are welcomed.
Yeah, and feel free to send us any feedback, questions, and we might respond to them on the show.
For sure.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I would definitely love to feel like this is a open conversation with the Gallatin Valley, with Bozeman, that we're having just a free and open conversation, going back and forth, sharing ideas. We definitely would love to get your feedback.
And we'd love to talk about Fauxmages now.
Yeah.
Fauxmages, what's that?
Fauxmages, it's a local, I guess, Bozeman-based food business. This woman, Peg Schaefer, she creates vegan cheeses. They're pretty amazing. I think she's by occupation, she's a chef, and I don't know her whole story. I think we'd like to get her on the show and talk to her. But you can find her at the farmers market in the summer and also the winter farmers market. But Fauxmages, she makes some amazing cheeses. I mean, they taste legit, all kinds.
Aren't her products also available in the mall?
They were. I was there recently and I didn't see any, so I'm not
gotcha.
sure. Yeah, I need to check.
For a while, they were available at that 406
marketplace. Yeah,
little store.
I didn't see that.
So,
recently.
but definitely at the winter and the summer farmers markets.
And she also makes other plant-based things. She makes this Parmesan cheese, which is made out of, I think, sunflowers maybe. We use it quite often. She started making vegan donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with that, right?
And
Yeah,
she
and-
also does crackers to go along with the cheese.
Oh, those crackers are amazing.
They really are.
They are
And
amazing.
the reason on her website, you can see the reason she actually went and started this business is that when she became vegan, she didn't like any other vegan cheeses out there, and that's the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing for her when she went vegan. So she decided to go into that, which we're very grateful. for,
Absolutely.
'cause
And it's just the
that's great.
variety of cheeses she can make. It's pretty amazing. She makes a brie, she makes a Swiss, she makes everything. You think of it, she can make it, and she does make
yeah,
it.
and she gets her ingredients from local family-owned farms and the food co-ops. So that's really cool as well.
Yeah, she's really nice. She really is. I mean, the food's amazing. The donuts, I haven't tried them yet. I keep seeing them on Instagram. And have you had any?
I had a little, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, she's started to make way more different kinds as well.
Yes.
So exciting. Yeah, they're awesome.
Right. And also, yeah, I think she makes some baked goods as well. But anyway, but Fauxmage, she is sponsoring Earth Day.
Yeah, we're gonna have a Vegan Earth Day March event. It's not really, it's gonna be a small march. Anyways, you can check that out on our Facebook group and Facebook page. We also have a page. You can have all the information there. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the future. And yeah, she gracefully agreed to give us some free food to give out to people.
Awesome.
Some
Yay.
cheese.
Very nice.
Some cheese.
That'll be a fun way to sample her wares.
Absolutely.
And just if anybody out there is wondering about the name of her brand, so Fauxmage, I guess, is kind of a play on the French word. Do you want to talk about it?
Let's ask our French expert.
You know, why am I talking about it? You talk about it.
It means fake. It doesn't sound good in English. But yeah, fromage is cheese in French, and so that's a plain words, obviously. And
Yeah.
if you wonder how it's written, it's Fauxmages.
Fromage.
Fromage.
Yeah.
And her website, fromage.com.
Nice.
A little advertisement there. We're not sponsored by
No.
that.
Well,
No
yeah,
opinions.
we do want our radio show to be Bozeman specific or Gallatin Valley specific. And so it is fun to highlight like what's going on around here. So
Yeah, and we should also mention, right? I mean, Big News Pharmacy just opened up again last weekend,
Yeah.
right?
oh yes, pharmacy is open on why can I think all of a sudden?
Right across from the high school.
Right across from the high
Yeah.
school.
Wow.
Is that
that's
it's
awesome.
Main Street right there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there on their opening day, and it was so wonderful to be back. It just felt good, and of course, it was beautiful and delicious.
Yeah.
Everything there is vegan.
I forgot to mention the next potluck's date and location. So it will be April 2nd. The potluck will be at 12:30, and the documentary screening will be at 2 p.m. And we'll screen this time punk rock vegan movie by Moby.
Oh, yeah.
It's very exciting.
That's a great movie. And by the way, we should mention that's a vegan potluck.
Yes, it's a vegan potluck. So bring vegan food. We obviously are very happy for anyone to show. Be awesome.
Yes.
And it will be at 120 South Grand Avenue.
120 South Grand.
Yeah, Grand Avenue.
Yeah, it's the Peace of Christ Community Church in the basement.
Yeah.
They've graciously allowed us to occupy their space.
Very grateful about that.
Yes. And so what we also do there every once in a while is we have a screening of a documentary. And like Lucy said, it's going to be Moby's new documentary called The Vegan Punk Rock Movie.
Yeah.
But last month, we screened a documentary called Peaceable Kingdom. It's really interesting. It's talking about we were talking a little bit about a farm sanctuary, but it has roots in Montana, and I thought it was really awesome. Some of you may be aware of a rancher. His name was Howard Lyman, and I think he's written a book called Mad Cowboy, but he's from Montana. He probably, I think by his own admission, had run one of the largest feedlots in the state of Montana, and now he's an all-out vegan, and
He's an activist now.
he's an
actually,
activist,
yeah.
correct?
And he went to MSU,
Yeah.
which is fun.
Strong connection to Bozeman, but let's talk about that documentary for a little bit. I mean, it was a pretty amazing story.
I mean, I did love that. I loved how I love the, I've seen obviously a lot of vegan documentaries, but what made this one special to me was I felt like you really got to know the farmers that are highlighted in this film. There's one couple that runs a sanctuary, and then a few other people who kind of, it highlights their journey, who are raised on farms and eventually went vegan. You really get to know them as well as the animals that they have in their care. So it felt a lot more intimate to me than a lot of other vegan movies that are also wonderful in their own right. But I really enjoyed the intimacy of Peaceable Kingdom.
Yeah, it's Peaceable Kingdom, The Journey Home, and you can find it online for free. peaceablekingdomfilm.org, I believe is the. Yeah.
And what was interesting about, I think, everyone in this particular film, the people featured, they were all farmers or ranchers, and now they're vegans. Yeah.
And I was just thinking with our dairy conversation today, like one of the couples, the married couples, I guess, who were highlighted in Peaceable Kingdom, was just this man and woman who just loved goats. They loved having goats. And they got to the point where it was like, well, we can't really afford this unless we turn this into a goat milk operation. We could sell the milk, and that's how we can support this hobby of ours of collecting goats. But it turned into exactly what we were describing with dairy cow production, which is, having to impregnate the goats. They deliver. You have to take the goats away from the mothers so that you can get the milk. The male goats are sent off to slaughter, and this couple just talked about how they kept doing it, but their consciences just wouldn't let them rest. It started bothering them more and more and more. Like, is this really how it has to be? Do we really want to be doing this over and over and over again? And so eventually they stopped operations. I think a lot of their goats went to a sanctuary, and so they found their way through so that's what I like about this documentary, is it shows how these people growing up on farms, especially, we accept the culture that this is normal, that we don't need to care about these animals, that we shouldn't care about these animals and what they're going through. And we're able to harden ourselves in a certain way to not feel bad about it. But, even the people in the business, it's still possible for them to
Open up, yeah.
Yeah, like reverse that enculturation and like come back to their childlike state of actually caring about animals again.
Well, I think there was a scene in there too, right, where the common thing on the county fair, you have these kids who go through 4-H and they bond with this animal, and then I think after they've won their blue ribbon and all these animals or whatever competed for their show or whatever that process is, then somebody buys them right at the county fair, and the teenager child is separated from this animal that they've bonded with right there, and somehow it's part of growing up on the farm that you just kind of have to accept that. And yet you could see so many of these teenagers just really unhappy, sad that they're being separated from this animal. So it's almost like, you almost have to desensitize yourself, so to speak.
It's like a learned prejudice or something which is just a fascinating thing to observe, that we do that to our kids. I've heard people say the first prejudice that children are taught is the prejudice to not care about animals, at least not certain animals,
The documentary coming up, Punk Rock Vegan Movie, let's maybe just talk about that real quick. I think one of the things that I thought was interesting is, I grew up in the 80s, listening to this kind of music, and I listened to a lot of the bands I think are featured in this, but I had no idea that many of them were vegetarians and vegans. And it was almost like like when now we use the term punk rock, we want to say something that's like badass and cool, but wow, they were being rebels back then by being vegetarian and vegans. And
I had no idea that there was a connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't feel super surprised. I haven't seen this documentary yet. I'm very excited to see it. And again, it's produced by Moby. But I do know one thing I've always known since I was a teenager is that people in the subculture of punk rock, they are all about questioning culture, definitely questioning authority, questioning what we've been taught. And so, this fits right in with that. And I'm trying to remember the phrase that Moby describes them or their culture that they. Do you remember straight edge or something?
Oh, straight edge, yeah.
Which I think meant for them just living a very aligned with their values and even being sober, being vegan. So yeah, I'm very excited to see this punk rock vegan movie.
It's gonna be a nice little nuance on the hippie vegan, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we invented that stuff, man.
Us old timers.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to the Vegans of Bozeman radio show on KGVM. And again, if you have any feedback for us, you can always catch us on email us at vegansofbozeman@gmail.com. You can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, and any of those venues. Here is the trailer for Moby's vegan punk rock movie, which the Vegans of Bozeman will be screening on April 2nd at 2 p.m. at 120 South Grand in the basement of the Peace of Christ Community Church. We hope to see you there.
Well, I think punk rock means something, Speaks to everything, absolutely everything that's gone before,
Punk rock got me into politics, social justice, anti-racism, women's rights, economic justice, what have you, anarchism.
I got introduced to the concepts of environmentalism through hardcore shows, concepts around like sweatshop, fair trade, all of that. In the mid-90s, there was sort of this like revolution of just a million vegan straight edge bands.
And we were on a mission. We were like, we're going to educate people on animal rights. Like, that's going to be the focus of our band.
When I became a vegan, it was very much like an animal rights thing. It was very much about animal liberation and